Did you feel like you were losing her for good? Like, what did you feel like for you as a man within the marriage?
I felt like I had totally lost control. I don't struggle with being envious over people, but I was watching a couple at dinner and they were just flirtatious back and forth and just, you know what I mean? And I remember sitting there thinking that, and I just thought, man, I would just love to have that. And I want her to have it too, being playful and joking around. That's something that we just lost, over the years.
You just got to be coachable.
If you don't already know who I am, my name is Griffin, and I help men that have something to lose in a divorce or a separation restore their marriage or their relationship, even when she has no interest in doing so. The admission price to share in today's success with one of my students is two things. Press the like button right now, please. But also for you, if you're a man in this situation where you're facing an unwanted divorce or separation, and your wife or your girlfriend has no interest in saving or restoring the relationship, press the subscribe button and change the notification settings to all. You might very well be one video away from transformation and turning the ship around, heading to game over. Today I'm with Brandon, and he's sharing the successes he's had in the DivorceStoppers program. So, Brandon, thank you for joining me on the call today. I appreciate you truly taking what we call iron sharpens iron to the next level, serving your other brothers and also serving new potential brothers that maybe were actually in the shoes that you were wearing. And since you've been in the program, it's to my understanding that you have changed the shoes. And so let's talk about that. The first question I want to ask you is, whenever you joined the program, how did you ultimately end up finding the Divorce Stoppers program and me?
Over the years, my wife and I have we've been married for 20 years this month. We've tried a lot of traditional counseling, over the years. It's always been helpful, but it just really didn't, have anything that was able to stick. So we'd kind of come to a point in February where I was pretty desperate and looking out, and I got recommended actually your channel on YouTube by actually a therapist that I was seeing, and because I was not interested in actually joining therapy because that had not worked in the past as far as marriage. So went on the YouTube channel, and it was kind of unorthodox way of approach on it. It just really felt right. It's been kind of something I've been praying for. So joined the Facebook page, and then ended up linking up with Marcel after watching some videos and just really feeling like it was something that would be a really good fit and something I wanted to try.
Wow, that's a beautiful story. And I'm really shocked. Nobody's ever told me that a therapist referred them to my channel. I can't believe a therapist would ever do that, because I speak highly of therapy if it's something that's not marriage counseling, because I think therapy is worth its weight in gold if you have a good therapist. But with
Um,
my experience, and it sounds like with your experience, marriage counseling, which a lot of marriage counselors are therapists, that's the opposite of what works, because they enroll you in talking about the problems and focusing on the problems, which the problems do need to be addressed. As you know, we address those in the fourth week in the program in step number 8. And we use those problems to bond you guys, to connect you through intimacy in a very, very non traditional and different way. Quite frankly, the opposite from what therapists would actually recommend. How do I know that? Because I went to school and majored in psychology. And the way I was taught to do that in college was the opposite of the way that we do it now, which is why this is not therapy. So let me ask you this. That's a very interesting story, and I appreciate you sharing that. I didn't know that. Where would you say you were emotionally and mentally when you first found the program, when you started watching the YouTube channel and then ultimately got on the call with Marcel?
Yes, I was kind of at a point where I was really lost with my wife, trying to do things around the house, trying to spend time with her, but never really connecting on an intimate level. Kind of with that, I led a lot with control, insecurity, a lot of fear, and didn't have any, my self-worth was really low
Yeah.
when I very first joined. I reacted very defensive instead of listening to her. I was, focused on what I wanted and not what she needed. Very selfish, very emotionally inconsistent, sometimes intense, sometimes absent. I was always trying to fix her instead of allowing God to fix me. I was always focused on her, and I failed to honor her voice. I just didn't hear her free, her frustrations, and just always had to have a solution to things, and it was just we were really to a wit's end, where she had talked to a lawyer and wanted to end the marriage when I had spoken to Marcel. So it was a pretty low point.
Wow. So what was happening, not just in you, but also what was happening in your wife? So I know that things escalated to the point that she said, look, I don't really know what else to do with this. The grass is greener on the other side. Maybe divorce is the best option. So what would you say was happening in the marriage at that moment that was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak? And what was your wife saying or doing that made it feel like that it was over outside of, her using the word divorce? Were there other things that made you think this is actually serious, that these are not just words that maybe we've spoken in the past?
Yeah, we sat down and had so many heart to hearts over the years, and those just were not going anywhere. She was distancing herself from me, pretty much did not want to be around me at all, closed off to me emotionally. No type of it got to a point of there was no flirting or anything back and forth. It was just strictly just getting up in very mundane relationship for both her and I.
Sounds like what's normal, but that's also why divorce is normal. Is from what you're describing, it sounds like you guys did what a lot of people do, especially at that 20-year mark, is pivot into business partners.
Yes,
And
yes.
and that's not fun.
Yeah,
Because here's the thing, I can have a business partner with one of my male business partners. I can have a business meeting and be business partners even like with Marcel and Tyler, the other people within the DivorceStoppers, and Ty. But unless we make a point to go like have some nachos at TGI Fridays, it's not fun, right? And so, but it's
exactly.
it's a lot easier for me to see that I need to do that with my team than it necessarily is normal for me to see that I need to do that with my wife, because we take our spouses for granted and we don't know how to get back from that a lot of times. So let me ask you this. Did you feel like you were losing her for good? Like, what did you feel like for you as a man within the marriage?
I felt like I had totally lost control. Not that I was looking for control, but I mean, just as far as my place in the relationship, felt like pretty much I wasn't invited to be, a part of her, just her world. I knew it was over because it had before in the past, she would even be somewhat open to talking, or we would always go and try marital counseling. Never worked. Go to a marriage retreat. We'd try to do all that. And this time she was really done. She was shutting down to conversations. She didn't, anything that was not about, the kids or logistics or the day, she didn't want to talk about it. Intimate, try to take her out on dates, try to do that sort of thing. But I didn't know how to really listen to her. I didn't have that transformation yet. So even when we go out on a date or try to do, those things for a couple of years, we were never connecting. It got to a point of where we both would look even at other couples and really we, would have conversations and we would want to have that. And we just didn't know how we were going to get there again. So it just felt like exactly what you'd mentioned, like a business transaction every single day.
Yeah, it sounds like you both knew that you wanted intimacy, but at some point it was a mutual desire. Like you both wanted that. And if she went to marriage retreats with you and if she went to marriage counseling with you, now, not always. A lot of times a wife will go to marriage counseling just to justify the means to the ends as a way to say, I tried, even though they have no intentions of really trying. But let me ask you, so you mentioned that you went to marriage retreat. You mentioned that you went to marriage counseling. So two questions around that. Were there any additional things that you guys tried together and or individually? And what specifically was it about marriage counseling or retreats or anything else that you tried, knowing what you know now, since you've had a transformation up here, which obviously because you're on this call, she's had a transformation because of your leadership. You've led her to encourage and help her make the change as well, to give her a reason to have hope, because seeing is believing. And she saw your change, which changed her, which if a wife has confirmation bias, the marriage will never be restored until she changes. A man changing is not enough. Knowing what you know now and the changes that you see that you've made and the changes that's evolved within her as well for her good through your leadership because of your love for her, and now transitioning into whenever she's speaking, the old you heard her. And I've heard you, that's like a pattern that I've heard you, like a very, very normal for these calls. Well, I didn't hear her. I didn't hear her. Well, obviously, if she was speaking, you have ears. You did hear her, but you didn't hear her. You didn't see her. You didn't make her feel heard, valued, and seen. Knowing what you know now and seeing what you're seeing, the scales have been removed from your eyes, the wax is out of your ears, your heart has changed. We took you through the process. We crushed your heart. We crushed hers because the baggage had to be dealt with. But we positioned your leadership to start building intimacy through communication first, so that it made sense on the timing of when you dealt with the problems in a way that restored and rebuilt the marriage, instead of just putting the focus on the problems. So here's the question.
Mm-hmm.
What was it specifically about all those things that you tried that wasn't working, knowing what you know now? You can start with counseling. That's an easy one to figure out. Like, did that make it worse? If so, why?
Yeah. I think counseling here lately, I think the last couple of times that we tried it actually did make things worse. It was so hyper focused on the relationship and us as a couple. We read a lot of books with a lot of the his needs, her needs, that sort of thing. We both dove into that on the spiritual side. Things would be good for a while and it was like a band-aid, and then it was really easy to fall right back into the business transaction instead of really building polarity there between us.
Man, if you're listening to this client success story and you're dealing with any of the things in his marriage, she didn't feel like she could breathe in the marriage. She felt like a girl. If you know that you need a transformation and you see some of the things that you've done wrong, and you're doing everything that you can to change the story, but it's not enough, right now, do me a favor. Put in the comments what you're dealing with, what you've done to harm the marriage, and what you've done to try to save the marriage. And put in the comments what's working for you and what's not working and where you need help. I will respond to every single comment that you post in the comments. And in some cases, I'll even do a YouTube video to help you have success in those areas to get you back on track.
And then it was really easy to fall right back into the business transaction instead of really building polarity there between us.
Yeah, I love that you're saying the word polarity. So what do you mean by polarity when you say that word?
Just playful kind of banter back and forth, just kind of a pull and a push as I'm acting in my masculine and she's in her feminine, just kind of a flirtatious back and forth, constant going on. And we have not had that since we started dating. I mean, even this morning, getting coffee back and forth, just grabbing at each other and just being playful and joking around. That's something that we just lost over the years. So the whole dating, we talk about going on trips and, there's just a lot of flirting going on back and forth. And that was something that I think that we both wanted. So, I think that that's generated off of that polarities, me being in focusing on myself, her focusing on herself. And, I have a routine where I'll get up and go to the gym and then kind of stay in my frame and, be kind to her and polite. We'll have a conversation and then kind of meet up through the day. Just, we have a rule. And I think, I've heard it in your program and I've heard it before, but it's having fun, hanging out and hooking up. So we just always kind of joke around back and forth that, we don't really, if it's not about those things, then it's going to have to be like it's a logistical conversation. So we just, we had so many years of serious talk and all these conversations and reading these books and self-improvement and going to seminars and things. And, now we just take a day by day approach. And if we have something serious to talk about, we'll kind of fill each other out and say, hey, and we kind of joke around and say, hey, we got a serious conversation. And a serious conversation, even to us, is sometimes even logistical a little bit, but we'll kind of go into that, have the serious conversation and then immediately go back, and say, okay, we're done with that. And then just go back into the bantering and the playfulness back and forth.
Yeah, that's why I always recommend for all students, as you're working to restore the marriage, when enough intimacy has been rebuilt through your new communication that we teach in the program, that you enroll your wife into, hey, it's really important to me that all of the stuff that's logistic, that's business, the kids, baby showers, wedding showers, bills, upcoming events, whether that's a wedding, whether that's an anniversary, a graduation, working on a rent house, a mortgage payment that's due, anything that's not fun, I consider that business. Unless it's an emergency, even if it's like talking about the soccer schedule for the kids. Yeah, you want to talk about that, right? Because you care about it, but it's not fun. It's all little bitty things that suck at the teat to drain the milk of fun out of your marriage. And so that's why you hear me talk about, like, when you come into the program, 80% of my students inside the Divorce Stoppers program, they turn the train around in 7 days. So if the train's headed to divorce, 80% turn it around and they know that this is going to work for them. 20% get stuck. And what they're always missing in my teaching, because they went through it a little too fast and didn't take that first teaching on communication as serious as they should have. And so they'll end up on a coaching call and they'll say, Denver, I'm doing positive, polite, and playful. And I'm like, show me your text messages. Prove it to me. And I'll see, yep, they're following the 3-line rule. They're adding the emojis. And it is positive, polite, and playful. But what they're missing is my communication verbally and via text message, is it making her feel heard, valued, and seen? Now, when you understand how to make that transition and you go back, that's why we hide in the communication lesson, we hide step 1.3. So we got step 1.2 and 1.1 and 1.2 in the program, which is where we teach communication. And if you really want to go next level, or if you miss what you should have in those 2 steps, we hide step 1.3 and 1.4 so that you really get it. If you're on a coaching call, we direct you there after the coaching call. So why do we do that? Because the goal is to make sure before you press send, am I really reading what she said? Is it really conveying to her, I feel you, I hear you, I see you? Or is it just positive, polite, and playful? Because positive, polite, and playful is a requirement, but it's not enough. Once you establish her valued and seen, now she wants to start hanging out and having fun. And with enough hanging out and having fun, eventually the next thing that comes naturally, sometimes you can get stuck in it, which we have a plan for that. You can get stuck in the friend zone with hanging out and having fun. And that's more dangerous almost than a separation, to get stuck in the friend zone. So when that happens, we do a pattern interrupt and we get you out of that, because for a marriage to exist, the polarity has to exist, because we need to take the friendship back to sexual passion, which is hanging out, having fun. And the third thing, which is the hooking up that you talked about. Let me ask you this. So you had been through a lot of stuff. I mean, you guys had tried, it sounds like, everything in the book, which is beautiful. It shows leadership on probably both of your parts to do what you could to fix your situation. But it sounds like she had become hopeless and you were starting to get there a little bit, but yourself. When you found the Divorce Stoppers program, you talked to Marcel, you did your enrollment call, your enrollment coaching session, the strategy session, where we talk about, our goal on those is to find out if you're a good fit. Tyler does most of those calls, and now we have Chad. And I always tell them, your goal is not to sell this, because that's the last thing I want to do, is sell anybody on this. If it makes sense, move forward. If they're a good fit and they're going to be a good student and they're not going to be a pain in my ass, and and it's somebody that we know is actually a good fit and that we can absolutely get them results, then help them do what makes sense for them. Were you skeptical when you found the program? And if so, what made you hesitant? If you were, maybe you weren't. I'm just curious about it.
You know what? I think probably for me, I had really prayed for something and I had a lot of faith. I've just, been through a lot of people have in my life. And I knew that God would put the right fit in front of me. It didn't happen right away. I would say it probably happened a couple weeks, but Denver, probably when I seen after I got recommended, and then after I watched a couple of your videos, and then when I talked to Marcel, I think I just knew it. There was this anointing that I just felt like, okay, I had kind of prayed for it. I had prayed very specifically. I like kind of like a no BS approach, not looking for anybody to fix. I just looking for the material and kind of a path that I can trudge on my own and do the heavy lifting and do the walking on. And I felt that in speaking to Tyler and to you and to Marcel, that it was just a good fit and that you guys were straight shooters. And just I had faith, I think, in the process. Now that I, know Marcel and I know you guys, I can have a little, get to know you guys a little better, but I have faith in the process of this process from building attraction and to also sustaining. I believe it is also a program that helps you sustain to where you don't have to get in this position again. And
Yeah,
to me, that's
that.
not, I haven't seen that in a lot of programs.
Yeah, I would actually like to rename the program a disciplined masculine leadership program, but that wouldn't convert very well because people wouldn't understand that until they got on the inside of it. Would you say that in addition to your marriage, that it's changed other parts of the way that you think about where you're going to take the rest of your life? If so, explain that.
Oh yes. I know that in general, I know I'm able to stay a lot more calm and grounded because I'm not ruled by so many feelings and emotions through the program. Many things hit. One of the biggest things that hit was just taking thoughts captive. Taking control. My thoughts will go a million times a minute and they go in a lot of different directions. And then what really hit home was the your feelings follow your thoughts. So being able to stay in control of the thoughts has been a big help in being able to stay calm and grounded and, prayerful in dealing with different situations, which radiance, better leadership. The three P's, the positive, polite, and playful. That's a good reminder for it's kind of incorporated into a mission statement that I've came for myself that kind of holds me accountable to where rules of engagement with dealing with different situations and people. I've learned to because of I think the work on the inside, I've been able to lead with, in my calling as far as just being grace and patient and lead with, purpose from a servant leadership kind of view. I'm able to give people space and, even if they blow up or whatever, it doesn't rattle me. I don't get rattled by it because I trust God's timing. It's not mine. And I'm fine with that. I'm letting go of needing responses and just really focusing on being a safe and steady man. That's something that I prayed for a long time. And probably the last thing, probably many more. The outcome, not being tied to outcome is helped out a lot. Helps me become a man that I want to be, that I can respect. And then it helps me have genuine, I think, and the cool thing is that for the first time in my life, I have genuine concern for people. I think before I was a selfish asshole. I think a lot of this, I think a lot now I hear my wife, I'm still a student. I think I'll be that way for life, but I hear my wife now and she'll tell me exactly what she needs. And I think she's been telling me that for a long time. I think the only difference is I'm able to really not only hear her, but listen to her.
Well, that's beautiful. So it sounds like you understand now how to see people, value people that maybe before you would have either judged their actions or even judged the person. And as one former asshole talking to another one, I totally can relate to that. And it's a beautiful thing having that transformation. I love that you brought up taking every thought captive. And what that means, a lot of my students have attention deficit disorder. And even for the ones that don't, you'll never become that 20-pound bottle of Valium that can't be phased that I talk about in the program until you position your leadership to slow down and stop trying to speed up the marriage restoration. And in order to speed up the marriage restoration, we teach you everything that you need to know to do that in 7 weeks, 100% in 7 weeks. You have the knowledge. Does it take longer sometimes before you move back in together? Before it's fully, both people are saying we're doing this, better than we've ever had before. But I love the fact that, right now, I'm going to make a political statement because of the environment that we're in right now, pretty much all over the world, is that when you become that 20-pound bottle of Valium that can't be phased, and if you want this income, just because we're not married to outcomes anymore, doesn't mean we don't want the outcomes. But by not being married to the outcome and not emotionally pivoting into the feminine, if we don't get the results that we want, will usually end up getting us the result that we want. So 20-pound bottle of Valium that can't be phased is a really, really beautiful place. And you know what I think also, I really think that this is one of the things that Jesus actually meant when he said that I came not only that you might be free, which in my interpretation of that scripture is that's your salvation. I came not only that you might have your salvation, and your spiritual freedom, but also that you might be free indeed. And for me, free indeed is what you're just now describing, that you've been freed of being married to all of these outcomes, which often leads to feelings of hopelessness, which is why so many people have thoughts of checking out, because they just don't see a reason to have hope. The Bible says to be hopeful in all things. What we're teaching on the inside of this program, would you agree that immediately all throughout this course and the coaching, that it all revolves around what are the practical steps that we give you that give you an actual reason to have hope, because seeing is believing.
Yeah. You mean in terms of like core values type of things?
I think probably just pretty much so think of it like this. When you first joined the program, you felt led by your creator to do it. And I get that. We get that a lot. And, used to in my YouTube videos, I would use really strong adult language. And I got convicted about 3 weeks ago to eliminate some of that language, particularly a word that starts with F. And I'll tell you something. I as a believer myself, as a Christian, I use that language on purpose. And I had a lot of prayer and fasting around that. And I was never convicted to change that. And I literally asked God, should I change this? And he never convicted me to change that. Just 3 weeks ago, he did. And so I don't fully understand that, and I don't really need to understand that, but I am going to walk in obedience to that. The reason for that language was we would get Christians on the call, and because they knew I was a Christian, before I was using language like that, they would expect for the program to be free. And I'm like, man, there's a lot of free programs out there, but God himself personally directed me to make this a nonprofit. I shut down a multi-million-dollar insurance agency that we were about to take next level because God said, shut that down. My wife and I ran this program as a nonprofit for 8 years. We didn't take a penny. And I struggled with turning this company into a for-profit company. I didn't want to do it because our heart was always to take the millions of dollars that we made from running insurance call centers and to use that to do a nonprofit in our retirement to serve people all around the world to help them in their marriage. Knowing what I know now, since I've had a transformation, I wish we would have made the change 8 years before that, because we weren't serving those students for that 8 years the way that we should have, or the way that we could have. And it would have saved them a lot of money to have got faster results, even, if that makes sense. So a couple of questions. So once you got on the inside, what was different about the actual DivorceStoppers program, or maybe even from YouTube, that you hadn't seen anywhere else? What was different?
Well, I see what I do like about DivorceStoppers is it is pro marriage, that it's to restore your marriage.
Number one goal.
Number one goal. And while there's, steps, all the steps are key to try to to get the marriage back intact. I believe that marriage is fighting for some of the other programs. Notice that, which I agree that it does start with, both people working on themselves. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. They didn't put a lot of emphasis on, saving the marriage. It was more of just, becoming kind of, the man you were created, or the woman that you were created to be. So I really feel that this program is key to resolve and restore the marriage. So that was a little bit different than some of that I've seen. I also think that it's very well, that's different that I've seen is it's very well laid out in an order that works, in a process that works. And if people are willing to really dive in and dig into the material, listen to it, let it sink in several times, write it down. If they're willing to do the heavy lifting and stick with the process, I really believe that it's set up in a way that really works. And each step is just really leads well into the next step and the next step. And then, if the person's really willing to get in there and do the heavy lifting and do the inner work, they can get a lot out of it. And I think it's laid out a good path. And I haven't seen that. I believe, a lot of the material, in my opinion, is very biblically based. It does line up with scripture, but it's not super, religious. I actually love the fact that you cuss. I mean, I think, that it shows something that's real. So, yeah, I like the fact that it's, that it lines up with scripture, but it's, in my experience, in my relationship with Jesus, it's something that's very real, and maybe it's not empathetic like some other programs that you're looking for, but I think it's genuine agape love rooted And I think that if the person will take the key principles in it, they could take it as far as they want. And it's things that can go into and bleed into all your relationships.
Well, that's beautiful. Right now, I'm going to align my actions with my goals, which is to get through this Zoom. Because if I were to align them with my feelings right now, I probably would have a few tears. That's really affected me emotionally to hear that you see that, like you got that on that level. Let me ask you this. Did you see as you're taking these steps? I mean, you acknowledge this, but I want to see if you see that I intentionally lined the program up in this framework, that it is about changing yourself. It is about being transformed by the renewing of your mind to hear, see other people, to build intimacy here, to understand all that. Did you see as I'm walking you through these changes that one of the things that I did intentionally in this program, because I walked this walk myself, this version of the program, I was actually the first student in it. And when I made these changes myself, I too made the mistake of just becoming the best me. And I saw that my wife resented that. So I understood in that moment that being in my second marriage now, because I was in a failed divorce, I had made that same mistake in the first time and I ran out of time. I almost saved my first marriage, but I literally just ran out of time. And this is why I tell people on YouTube, if she has confirmation bias, you'll never restore your marriage with information from YouTube. You need to do something to quickly get a transformation before she ends up with somebody else. Men, if you're wondering if you can have the same successes in his marriage when his wife wanted out of the relationship and she had no interest in working on the relationship or the marriage and it was affecting his soul, his spirit, his income, his occupation, if that's you and you want to turn your life around, turn your relationship around, and take everyone back to success, listen to me. In order for your relationship to change, when a wife or a long-term relationship girlfriend has confirmation bias, information is not enough. You need transformation. Right now, my video editor is putting up a QR code and the website called my free Marriage U-Turn Masterclass. I'm teaching that masterclass 5 times this week live. And there's no charge for registering for the masterclass. Pause the video right now, scan the QR code, or go to the website. The website is also going to be in the description of this YouTube video. Register for that free Marriage U-Turn Masterclass right now while there's seats available. But did you see as you were walking through the steps of the framework that you just described, that yes, we want you to become the best version of yourself, but at the same exact time, we're teaching you how to position her psychologically to follow your lead to also become the best version of herself so she doesn't resent your changes. And we're doing that by teaching you the communication that causes her to have fun and enjoy the process of following your lead. Maybe even though in the beginning she doesn't realize it's happening, you do, because I'm teaching you this is what we're doing. So, did you see that? At what point did that click for you in the program?
Yeah, absolutely it did. It reminds me of that, it says in the Bible, it's his love that draws us to repentance. And, I think through this program, when we're doing the true inner work in here, like you said, you're creating a man that she's always desired to be with. I think when I kind of realized I realized that pretty early on, Denver, I'll be honest. I've started, as I kind of dug in and allowed my heart to be transformed, she was able to kind of follow that lead. She's more, safer to follow that. And it cracks me up. I heard her on the phone the other day, and she's using a lot of the language that we use in the course. And she doesn't actually know the details of the course. She knows that I talked to Marcel and that there's a Denver, and she knows that, but I don't think how much she really wants to know, but she really sees the change. But it's given her something to follow. She's started getting help for herself because she's seen a lot of the changes in me. I didn't ask that of her. That's because something that she's kind of taken on herself. So yeah, it's been cool to see. And we're still, I know we got a road still to go, and it's going to be like that for a while. And I'm fine with it. But it's just something that she can follow.
Yeah, it sounds like what you're describing is because of your leadership, she also has changed, and you just overheard her on the phone, like a mini coaching session with somebody else, maybe is what it sounds like.
Yes. Yeah, it's pretty funny. I got my kids, and she says if it's to be, it's up to me is the big one around here, and then between her and I, the happy talk, fun talk. We always tell each other that it's like, hey, when we start going sideways, it's like it's not happy talk, fun talk. We don't need to be
Happy
talking
talk, fun
about
talk.
it.
Happy talk, fun talk. I don't know if you do that with your kids. I do that with my grandchildren, and sometimes even still I only have one minor child, which is Ty. He's sitting over here right now. He's my video editor, actually. But everybody knows if I look at them, if they're in a bad mood or whatever, complaining, especially like grandkids, they get into an argument. I'll just look at them. I just give them the look, and they're like, I am happy. I am happy. And then guess what? They say that 3 times. They have to hold a smile, and then they're happy again. So we really can change how we feel. And the fact that your leadership is not only showing that to your wife, what you're doing basically is rebranding the legacy that you're leaving to your children, which will affect their marriages and their children, which is your grandchildren. Isn't that just a beautiful thing that just makes your heart freaking explode? You know what I mean? That's masculine leadership, right?
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. So the goal here is to immediately turn the marriage around. And then as we go through the 7-week transformation, to have all these different paradigm shifts of how you think to restore the marriage. Number one goal is marriage restoration. At what point did you see your first and your second paradigm shift? And you might even look back on that like you did something that maybe you were like not sure if it was going to work, or maybe you were sure it was going to work, even though it seemed unbelievable, but you saw the other students, it was working for them. At what point did you do something like that where you're like, okay, this is clicking. I get it. And I'm seeing, like, I know this is working. And then I've had these shifts where like, oh, wow, I'm the new me and she's becoming the new her. And this marriage is going to be restored. Like, how did you process that? And, what timetables, if you kind of ballpark remember as you're going through the process?
Yeah, the first step was a big eye opener for me, because it really opened me up to realize how detached and what a selfish jerk I am. And so that was the first one. And then the intimacy letter, writing that out was it took me about 3 days, and that was a process. That really hit home, and then it really brought me to a point of acceptance, to accept the fact that kind of laying all of getting through it, that if there's 2 people in this marriage, and I felt like I could look at her in the face and tell her that, that if you wanted, it's my preference to stay together, but if you want to call this thing, I'm not the only one in it anymore, and I wouldn't blame you. And I think that was a big shift, because she told me later on that she could really tell with the intimacy letter, and then just after that the choice was totally hers. She felt really free. So
what you're describing, man, I bet it was. So what you're describing is step 1 of the program, communication. Which that changes everything. That's what turns the train around. And really it helps you see yourself, because when you see yourself in that way, when you see how selfish you've been with a good heart, like good intentions, but you don't know what you don't know. And as you start seeing yourself, then and only then are you positioned to start seeing her. And we accomplish all of that. That's the goal. It only happens 80% of the time, but it happens 80% of the time with new students in that first week. For the 20% of students, we'll give them grace and give them another few days, maybe carry into the second week. And then it sounds like your second shift that you had internally here and there was in the 4th week in the program, in step number 8, where what we're calling the intimacy letter, for anybody's like, what is that? Oh, I wrote an apology letter in another program. It didn't do anything. It's definitely not an apology letter at all. What it is, it's a mirror where you see your own soul in the reflection in her eyes in a way. For me, when I did it, I had never done something that deep on that level and truly saw myself, which positioned me to see my wife, honestly, my children, my in-laws, my parents, in ways that it was, for me, it was a spiritual awakening. It was spiritual, emotional, and it even manifested physically for me. So would you say that for you, that was a mirror that was like, wow, there's a whole new universe that I have totally been blind to? Was blind, but I think the song Amazing Grace would be appropriate for that, at least in my experience. Did that apply to you in the same way?
Oh, yeah, so big. so big, and it that still rings today. Every day I think about that. So yeah, that was huge. That's not like you said, with my kids, with everybody. It's been huge.
What was it specifically? You mentioned earlier you made her feel safe in your new communication. What was it in your new leadership that you can think of, just keeping it simple, that specifically made her feel safe?
Presence over pressure, ownership over reaction, mystery over neediness, compassion over control, consistency over chaos, faith over fear, humility and healing through God's word. Just letting that sink in.
That's absolutely beautiful. Like, you hit every single one of the pressure points on that. So you've already kind of at the beginning of this call, give us an insight to where you guys are at today in the marriage. So how does your wife treat you now that's different from the way that she treated you emotionally, physically, spiritually, compared to when you first joined the program?
You know, Denver, I remember sitting in a restaurant sometime around the end of last year, and I don't, by the grace of God, I don't struggle with being envious over people, but I was watching a couple at dinner, and they were, you know, about our age, and they're just flirtatious back and forth, and just, you know what I mean? And I remember sitting there thinking that, and I just thought, man, I would just love to have that, you know, and I want her to have it too. And so I think what's changed now, we laugh, we connect without, you know, any pressure. We don't put pressure on one another. We really have conversations that aren't just deep, but just about, you know, each other's dreams and things that are kind of fun to talk about. I really feel like we're able to kind of get to know each other on a much deeper level. A lot of curiosity, like we didn't have curiosity in things before, but all of those things, I just so thankful for that.
Yeah, and curiosity is part of the playful, hanging out, having fun, and hooking up. It's fun to have curiosity, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it's kind of sexy in a way, and marriage is supposed to be sexy. That's what makes it fun and playful. Let me ask you this. If there's another man that's watching this video right now, and he is literally feeling hopeless, he's exhausted all avenues, and his wife also has come to said, you know what? Like, we have tried everything. I am done. I want a divorce. If that man right now and you've seen students in the program, in the Iron Sharpens Iron support program, that part of the program, you've seen students that are in situations or that were in situations that are probably 10 times worse than yours, way many more obstacles, that have had their marriages restored. What would you say for that man that's in the shoes that you were in, or maybe even shoes that involves so much more than what you've actually dealt with, that his wife has said, I want a divorce, and he's feeling hopeless, and he's scouring YouTube and lost 40 pounds in the last 6 weeks because he just doesn't know what to do? Because if you don't know something, you don't know what you don't know. What would you tell that gentleman?
Invest into yourself. It's not too late. It reminds me, there's a verse in 2 Chronicles 7:14 says that those of you who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face. I will hear their prayer, forgive their sins, and heal their land. And for me, the biggest part in that verse is seeking his face. So I think in this program, you have to seek after that. You need to seek after there's a lot of material. I think this is the program that it isn't free, but you're going to need to invest into yourself at this point if you're at the place where I was at. And I think if you're able to trust this process, I think if you really dig in and you're wholehearted about it, you're fully in. I think that through that surrender, through giving that up, I believe the Bible to be true. I believe that it is our responsibility to fight for the marriage. I believe that it's not too late if you invest in yourself, if you trust the process, if you're willing to humble yourself, if you're willing to just really, swim upstream and where the stagnant place where you're at. I think that this is a really great opportunity. I've seen a lot of guys have their marriages turned around or turning around in a short period of time.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just really, this is a program I can get behind, and I believe in them. It's helped me tremendously.
Let me ask you this. Let me ask your opinion on something. There's a lot of Facebook groups that are, for lack of a better word, in my opinion, they're Christian Facebook groups. The person that started them has a really good heart and super good intentions. But if you look inside those groups, it's a bunch of losers helping losers feel good about losing. And so I don't say that from the mindset of look at those losers, not in a judgmental way. I mean that the reason the group exists is to aid in marriage restoration, and almost every single one of them are getting divorced. And here's the common theme that I hear. They do everything that they know, counseling, they go talk to their preacher, they go talk to their pastor, they pray. I'm the recipient of a supernatural, medically documented, instantaneous miracle. I believe in miracles. I also believe that miracles, even biblically, are the exception. And even when I got my miracle, it did not come until I asked God for help, number one. But number two, he positioned me to have instructions, and it required obedience. Then I received my miracle after I took action steps. And that miracle did not come until, I'm going to tell you, the action steps that he gave me, because it was medically. Let me just explain to you what it was. I hadn't been out of my bed in a month, in 4 weeks. And the day that I followed instructions to get out of my bed, I was obedient. I wasn't able to get out of my bed for 4 weeks. I had a medical disability, so to speak. I hadn't eaten a bite of food in 5 weeks. I had been bedridden for 4 weeks. I couldn't even get up to pee, and I didn't need to do number two because I wasn't eating. My wife literally brought me a urinal. So here's what I'm saying. God gave me instructions one day. I followed those instructions. The next day, I had enough strength for no known reason other than I followed the instructions to get out of my bed and to walk up a flight of stairs with my wife and my stepson's help. And that's when I received my miracle. The pressure on my feet, I was 87 pounds that day. The pressure on my feet from walking upstairs with their help made the skin come off of my feet that week. That's how big of a deal this was for me to be obedient. Within an hour, I was verbally delivered the miracle and I received it. And it was a medically documented, instantaneous miracle that no way to explain it in the natural. It didn't happen until I took the action steps. And that required, number one, obedience the day before, and the second day, action steps. So there was 2 days of action steps, then I received it. What would you say to the man that has so much faith? When I was going through cancer treatment, I saw a lot of men that had the same diagnosis that I did that had overwhelming faith, but they're in a grave today, and I'm zero evidence of cancer. Stage 4 throat cancer, my tongue, my vocal cords, the roof of my mouth, my teeth, all of it, my lymph nodes, I was ate up with cancer. 3 specialists said you have 6 months left to live. My voice is stronger today than it was before that diagnosis. I don't think I'm a better man than my fellow brothers in Christ that got the same diagnosis around the same time as me, and they're in a casket. I fought for my life. I was believing God for a miracle, but I went on a worldwide journey and spent all my wealth and fought like a junkyard dog to do everything that I could to save my life. And I didn't get the miracle. You know what I was dying from? The side effects of the treatment. The doctors got the cancer. God led me to the right doctor to get that. But I was dying from the side effects of it. And they could not fix it. That man that has so much faith that if you ask for anything in Jesus' name, you will receive it. But also, you're acknowledging on this call that faith without works is dead. What would you say to the gentleman that's in those Facebook groups that he has done everything that he thinks he could, and now he's making this statement: I just give my marriage to God?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
It's heartbreaking to see those marriages end, because I don't think they're supposed to. What would you tell that guy?
Man, I don't think it's God's responsibility to do that part. I think it's our responsibility to take that first step forward. I go to this weekly men's Bible study, and right before I joined, I literally felt the Lord tell me, don't bring it up. Don't bring in, my wife had told me, and then it was total confirmation, because after I joined the program, you had mentioned, don't bring stuff up to your family. Don't bring it up to, it'll later on, it'll backfire basically. So I took heed to that. And I was at that Bible study, and one of the gentlemen, I just, I had opened up to him, not at that Bible study, but he's a, a friend, a brother in the Lord, and he knew my situation. And he asked me, he goes, asked me how my marriage was doing. And I said, it's struggling. And he told me that, and he's a great guy, great brother in the Lord, but he goes, you need to just give it to the Lord. And I kind of looked at him, and I had the Bible, we were discussing, in a conversation, I handed the Bible to him, and I asked him to show me where that was at in the Bible, for God to take care of it. And, so I seen that guy here recently, about a week or so ago again, and he asked me, how things were going, and then I said, well, my marriage is being restored. And then he said, wow. And he brought up, me bringing that up to him. And, and he, it's not the Lord's responsibility. That's our responsibility. We can pray and we can even pray for people's hearts, but God, there's no evidence that God even will change your wife's heart or anything like that. If it's to be, it's up to me. It's for me to change, for me to surrender, for me to go to the Lord, for him to allow him to change me. And through that whole process, she's going to see that man. But it's not the Lord's responsibility to restore our marriages. It's ours.
Yeah, 100%. Faith without works is dead. And so a lot of people have the works, they don't have the faith. But particularly in Christian, they absolutely have the faith. But if you don't implement the works with it, do you know, really and truly, when I was struggling to transition this company into my business to actually take care of my family financially, you know what I'm saying? To make this my primary business and to close a multi-million-dollar business and transition into doing this full time as a for-profit. And I was struggling around that because for 8 years, my wife and I did marriage coaching for free. We started at a little Baptist church in Arkansas. And something that the Lord placed in my heart was, wise is the man that brings the grain into the storehouse. Blessed is he who sells it. And he just talked to me through that. And I didn't hear him at that moment audibly, but I heard in my soul. He said, Denver, I have allowed you and helped you go through so many valleys of shadows of death to position you with the grain that my people need to purchase. And that was the scripture that he gave me, where I just shut up and stopped arguing about anything, making this an actual profitable business that not only could I serve and walk into my calling and help people, but also take care of my family and build a legacy of wealth, like what I'm teaching men in the program to do. So let me ask you 2 more questions, and thank you for your time. I know this has been a little bit of a long call, but if you could go back and tell yourself on day 1 in the program of the process as you were walking through the marriage restoration, if you could go back and tell yourself anything, what would it be?
Trust the process. That was really hard for me to grasp at first. But if you'll just put one foot out in front of the other, is what I would tell myself, you'll be all right.
So for a new student that enrolls in the program this week, day 1, they might be scared shitless because they're seeing something that's radically different. And so you would say to that guy, trust the process. Why would you say trust the process?
Because there's going to be some things that are probably counterintuitive to what, would be popular in traditional counseling, or what you would think would quote unquote work. But if you trust it in the way that it's laid out, and you just focus on the inner man and changing that guy in the mirror, I can guarantee you it'll take root, and before you know it, you're down a journey of transformation that'll be much better for you.
As you're going through the 14 steps in the program yourself, how many times, if you're just ballparking or guessing, was it that I taught you to do things that's the exact opposite of what you thought you should do? So that's what you mean by trust the process. So those things that are the opposite of what you thought would work, did they work?
Yes, they did.
All right. Anything else you want to add while you got the floor here?
No, just just trust the process. I know it's intimidating. You don't think, but it works.
Do you now have a comprehensive understanding what I mean? If you've ever heard me say this, I don't say this I do say this a couple times in the program, but when I say this is not about you climbing up this grueling mountain, that you've got to work so hard on this, that when I position you to say working on the marriage is what's not going to work, what we do is get you to realize that you are the asshole when you join the program that's at the top of the mountain, and nobody wants to be around you. Your wife is down at the bottom of the mountain at the cool river and wants to just enjoy her life in peace and for you to go away. Would you agree that the process that we took you through on this journey helped you walk down the mountain where your wife is at, and now you two are positioned where she wants to go back up there with you?
100%. I did remember you saying that, and I didn't understand it, and it makes total sense now.
All right. Beautiful, beautiful transformation. Well, Brandon, listen, thank you for taking iron sharpens iron to the next level. I believe and I hope and I pray and I claim in Jesus' name that this is going to position where it's really, really going to help a lot of other people take that first step that are in a place where they're feeling hopeless. They don't know what else to do. And they're walking in a place of maybe even judgment if they've been watching me for a while, like, wow, that guy uses some cuss words and stuff like that. He's so real. But it's so offensive to me because, I don't know, to somebody that said the F-bomb in one of his videos, can he really do work for the Lord and actually help somebody? This is what I mean when I say this. Even if you read the book of Genesis, God literally created marriage before ministry. And I think that was done on purpose for a reason. Don't you?
100%.
Because
100%.
Now we know what it also says about two together, what they can accomplish compared to one. So if it is to be, it's up to me. That truly does position you so that when you do everything that you can do, that positions God to show up and opens up the doors for him to step in and do everything you can. Did you see those things happen in your life where you just knew it was God?
Yeah, if it's to be, it's up to me is actually to me is a very deep surrender to God.
Me too. It's a spiritual transformation in obedience to him. Don't you agree with that?
I 100% agree with it. It's trust. He perceives it in my walk with him. He perceives it as trust. And when the Lord knows that we trust him, he aligns us for blessing in our life.
Yeah, trust, action steps, and obedience. It's working and exercising your faith. Beautiful.
Yeah.
All right. Listen, well, I appreciate your time coming on here. We'll get this up in the next couple of weeks. Anything else before I let you go, Brendan?
No, man, it's one of the things I wrote down. It's our mission isn't to win our wives back. It's to become the men that God has called us to be. And in the process, we get our wives back.
Beautiful, beautiful blueprint. And we teach you how to do that in a way she doesn't resist the changes. She follows them and changes herself, right?
That's right.
Absolutely. That's what it means to become a 1% of a 1% man that we're called to be.
100%.
All right, brother, go live your life. Go have fun with that beautiful wife and those children. Be positive, playful. Teach them what it means to be a 1% of a 1% and how to lead themselves.
Thanks, brother. You and Brandy keep doing the good fight, man. Thank you.
All right, brother. I'll talk to you soon. Men, if you're wondering if you can have the same successes in his marriage when his wife wanted out of the relationship and she had no interest in working on the relationship or the marriage and it was affecting his soul, his spirit, his income, his occupation, if that's you and you want to turn your life around, turn your relationship around, and take everyone back to success, listen to me. In order for your relationship to change, when a wife or a long-term relationship girlfriend has confirmation bias, information is not enough. You need transformation. Right now, my video editor is putting up a QR code and the website called my free Marriage U-Turn Masterclass. I'm teaching that masterclass 5 times this week live. And there's no charge for registering for the masterclass. Pause the video right now, scan the QR code, or go to the website. The website is also going to be in the description of this YouTube video. Register for that free Marriage U-Turn Masterclass right now while there's seats available. And if you haven't already done so, please, 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 for yourself, press the like button on the video, which tells the algorithm to serve more content like this to you because YouTube is suppressing my content, and also press the subscribe button and change the bell notification settings to all so you don't miss any of the comment or the free training that I'm putting out. Also, in addition to that, there's another resource. If you know that your train is heading to divorce land, game over, separation forever, and that you think there's a possibility that she's going to end up with another man, right now my video editor's putting on the screen the next video that you need for this exact moment in time. Also, put in the comments anything else that you're going through that you'd like to see me do a video on that can serve you and help you turn your marriage train around.